Lewis Hamilton's fury towards Ferrari in Baku has exploded in a way that nobody in the Formula One world could ignore, and the shocking evidence that has now come alight makes it painfully clear why the seven-time world champion was left so bitterly disappointed after qualifying. This wasn't about lacking raw pace. This wasn't about the SF25 suddenly betraying him with unpredictable handling. No, this was about strategy, or rather the complete lack of it. A single tire decision effectively ended Hamilton's session before it had even begun. He arrived in qualifying believing he finally had the tools to fight at the very front, that the speed he had shown in practice would translate into a serious push for pole position. But instead, he was left stunned, watching helplessly as Ferrari sent him out on the wrong compound at the decisive moment, killing his chances and forcing him out in Q2. For a driver like Hamilton, who thrives on precision, control, and execution, being undone by a mistake from the pit wall is the ultimate nightmare, and his fury after the session made it clear that this blunder cut far deeper than most. The newly surfaced evidence confirms that Ferrari committed to sending Hamilton out on the softer C6 tires, while the rest of the frontrunners were wisely relying on mediums. On paper, Ferrari's theory was that the softs would deliver instant grip, but in reality, they overheated almost immediately, leaving Hamilton with instability and zero consistency across the lap. He fought the car through the high-speed corners, wrestling it with everything he had, but it was hopeless. The tires were simply not suited to the conditions, and his lap time fell miserably short of the benchmark. The insult was compounded by the fact that his own teammate, Charles Leclerc, benefited from being on the correct compound, delivering the lap that ultimately pushed Hamilton out of the top 10. Hamilton's elimination wasn't down to driver error, but to a decision that never should have been made in the first place, and Hamilton knew it. Afterward, Hamilton admitted that he had wanted to be on mediums, that he had been fully aware of what tire would work best, but was told by his team that fuel levels and warm-up times made the option impossible. To him, that explanation was nothing but evidence of poor planning and lack of foresight that left him without any real chance to fight. What made the situation especially bitter was that just a day earlier, Hamilton had topped FP2. For the first time in months, he had felt like he was truly in rhythm with the Ferrari, ready to attack, ready to prove himself in red. To go from that high to a Q2 exit in the space of 24 hours created a gulf of frustration that Hamilton could barely contain. His anger wasn't just about one qualifying result. It was about a wasted opportunity, the sense that Ferrari's repeated strategic failures were once again costing him the chance to show his greatness at the sharp end of the grid. For Ferrari's loyal tifosi, this was déjà vu of the most painful kind. They had watched the red cars fly in practice, raising hopes of redemption after Monza, only to see everything unravel when it truly mattered. Hamilton's fury echoed the frustration of the fans, who were exhausted from seeing Ferrari's potential constantly undermined by operational errors. And the evidence that has now emerged only strengthens the narrative that Ferrari, despite all the resources and all the talent, still stumble at the very moments when perfection is required. For Hamilton, who left Mercedes to chase glory in red, this was yet another painful reminder that the dream risks being shattered not by lack of speed, but by the same weaknesses that have haunted Ferrari for years. His fury is not simply the reaction of a frustrated champion. It is the sound of a driver who knows, without question, that he deserves better. What made this qualifying disaster even more shocking is the context in which it unfolded. Everything leading up to Saturday pointed toward a breakthrough. Hamilton had topped FP2 with a lap that stunned the paddock, quicker even than last year's pole position time, and he did it with a control and confidence that had been missing since the moment he first donned Ferrari red. For the first time all season, he looked like himself again, fluid, precise, fast. The Tifosi seized on it instantly, believing they were finally seeing Hamilton master the SF25. The media buzzed with talk of Ferrari returning to contention. Headlines proclaimed that Hamilton could be on course for a sensational pole, and fans dared to dream of a front-row lockout in Baku. Against that backdrop, what unfolded in Q2 was not just disappointing, it was devastating. The evidence is clear. Ferrari sent Hamilton out on the C6 soft tires while most of the grid, including Leclerc, opted for mediums. On paper, the softs looked like they could deliver a quick first lap, but in reality they were a trap. The compound was too sensitive, overheating with the slightest slide, and completely unsuited to Baku's narrow, high-load corners. Hamilton, who had felt so confident after practice, suddenly found himself wrestling a car that refused to give him consistency. The stopwatch told the brutal story, more than 7/10 of a second off Lando Norris's benchmark, not because of mistakes, but because he had been given the wrong tool for the job. Hamilton's anger wasn't only about the bad call itself. It was about how it was handled. He revealed afterward that he wanted mediums, that he believed they were the right choice, but was told there wasn't enough time to warm them up and not enough fuel left for another push. To a driver of Hamilton's caliber, that excuse was insulting. It exposed a lack of flexibility, a lack of preparation, and an inability to react under pressure. In Hamilton's eyes, it wasn't just a mistake, it was a catastrophic failure of planning. And the sting of it all was amplified by the fact that it was his own teammate who delivered the knockout blow. Leclerc, always a qualifying specialist, strung together a brilliant lap on the mediums that nudged Hamilton out of the top 10. For Hamilton, it was humiliation. To be eliminated in Q2 was already painful, but to have it happen because of a strategy error and to be beaten by his own teammate on the very tire he had wanted to use, it felt like betrayal. Not betrayal by Leclerc, but betrayal by the very system that was supposed to support him. This was supposed to be a partnership, a united effort to bring Ferrari back to glory. But in that moment, it looked as though Hamilton had been left completely exposed. Ferrari team boss Fred Vasseur tried to downplay the disaster, insisting there were positives to take from Hamilton's pace and promising that the matter would be dealt with internally, not in public. But no words could disguise the reality. This was a catastrophic own goal by Ferrari, the latest in a long history of strategic errors that have haunted the team for decades. And the timing could not have been worse. With Mercedes breathing down their necks in the constructors' standings and McLaren becoming stronger with every race, Ferrari needed to prove they had operational excellence to match their raw speed. Instead, they proved the opposite, that even when they have the pace, they still find ways to self-destruct. For Hamilton, the psychological impact of this failure is profound. He has spoken many times about how alien the SF25 feels, how much he has had to adapt his natural driving style just to extract performance from it. This weekend in Baku was supposed to be different. For the first time, he felt like the car was working with him instead of against him. He was beginning to rediscover that elusive flow, that rhythm that made him unbeatable in his prime. To have that taken away, not by rivals, but by his own team's blunder, was crushing. He described himself as furious afterward, and it is no exaggeration. Drivers can accept being beaten on merit, but they cannot accept being sabotaged by their own pit wall. For the Tifosi who traveled to Azerbaijan, the frustration was unbearable. They had seen Hamilton dominate practice, they had felt momentum building, and they believed Saturday would deliver redemption. Instead, they watched another nightmare unfold, another Ferrari driver let down by another Ferrari mistake. For fans who have endured nearly 2 decades without a championship, this was salt in an open wound. They know Hamilton still has greatness in him. They know he is giving everything to this project. But they also know that if Ferrari continue to repeat the same operational mistakes, those moments of greatness will never translate into silverware.